Ever been in a meeting and get frustrated that your voice is not being heard? Can't get a word in as the talkers are always talking? What I say isn't always heard or listened to, and in fact, many times it gets poo-pooed. In other words, it gets pushed to the side. So how can I raise my profile in meetings? Let's discuss.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Giannoutsas.
Hey listeners, welcome to this week's Ask Denis Freestyle episode. Of course, this is an episode whereby I'm asked a question by our listeners, or I share my thoughts and insights and experience from working with many leaders around the globe. So I hope you're enjoying the mashups that we're bringing to you at the moment. In other words, a mashup is, if you haven't already heard it, is snippets from different episodes that I pulled together to create a mashup episode. And that's more about for you to actually just understand what is some of these episodes out there and what are my guests are saying and what are they sharing. And then hopefully what actually grow your appetite to go then and listen to the full episode. So listeners, how has your week been going? Have you had a great week here that you've just had, and what went well for you and what could you have done differently? It's been an awesome week. And so I'm really excited about bringing you today's topic, because it's a really interesting question that I'm asked quite often. The question is, of course, how can I raise my profile in meetings? Now, this is not about your voice only being heard, right? So it's not just about your voice or about you. What it's about is about you adding value and being a voice of influence. Somewhere whereby you are being heard, but then you can be influential at the table in the meeting as well. And I'm going to share with you today 3 key areas that I think are important for you to think about and to help your voice, your leadership voice, for you to have your profile raised in a meeting. Number 1 is to take time out before the meeting to understand your intent for the meeting. In other words, what do you want to get out of that meeting that you're going to go to? I'm talking about being really clear on that. Because you see, I find that too many people or leaders go to meetings just for the sake of going to a meeting. Why? Because they've been invited. Now, they sit there and they're not sure what's going on. In fact, some of them, here it's going to come, listeners, listen to it. They sit there and maybe they are an empty suit sitting in a seat, taking that seat up at the table. I'm also thinking it's a bit like going to a networking meeting as well. What's your intent when you go to that networking meeting? Is it a sausage roll and a cup of tea? Or you're there to meet 1 to 3 key individuals? Notice I didn't say 50. Just want to keep it nice and simple. But are there some 1, 2 or 3 key quality people that you can meet to start to sow the seed and build the relationship? So as you see, it's not just about a meeting like going into a team meeting or a custom meeting or anything like that, but it's also could be at a networking event and so forth. What is your intent? What do you want to get out of that meeting? And being very clear about that. Number 2 is, what are the 1, 2, or 3 key questions you want to ask in that meeting? Again, notice that I said 1, 2, or 3. I didn't say 50. And you know what? You're probably going to ask more questions as you go along based on what people might be sharing in relation to the question you've already asked. You're probably going to be asking questions that others in the room wanted to ask, but didn't have the courage, aren't bold enough, are quite scared to ask the question because it could have been a dumb question, or it could have been a question that got poo-pooed, as I said before, or it could be a question that people thought, there's got no relevance here at all. But have you ever noticed that sometimes you might be like that and you don't want to ask the question, and then someone else asks the question and everyone goes, great question. You go, damn, why didn't I ask that question? So I'm going to ask you to think about what is the 1 to 3 questions you might want to ask in the meeting. You see, this is where you'll be seen as adding value to people in the meeting and the meeting as well. But you might be sitting there thinking, what types of questions should I be asking? Well, I'm going to say to you, stay away from the closed questions. Make sure you use the open-ended thinking questions. Ones whereby you can ask the question and then get people to start thinking about things. Not enough people are thinking about what they say and what they share. And I think it's really important that we do that, but we also give people the space to think about the answer to our questions. So the second one there is, what's the 1, 2, or 3 key questions you want to ask in the meeting? Number 3, here we go. Bring energy to the meeting. Oh, what do we mean by that? And I'm talking about the right amount of energy. And you might ask, how much is the right amount of energy? Well, it really depends. First of all, what I want to say here is that people don't want to be around what I call a knuckle dragger. In other words, shoulders are hunched, arms are draped beside you, and your knuckles are almost dragging on the ground, and you're feeling sorry for yourself or the organization. People want to be around an energetic leader. Be mindful of the audience that's actually in front of you, or the situation you're in, or the discussion that's happening. This will help you be mindful of the amount of energy that you need to bring to the meeting. Don't be afraid of bringing energy. But what I'm going to say to you is be you, be yourself. Because you see, if you're going to be something that you're not normally, then people are going to pick up on that, and they're going to understand why they're not being real or authentic. But you know what? You want to bring energy to an actual event, to a meeting as well. You can do that by actually putting your hand up to do things. But one way that I find that you can actually have energy and raise your profile as well in the meeting is to sit up straight in your chair. Don't slouch. And if you're sitting up straight in your meeting and you're actually even leaning into the meeting, you will actually see how much more energy you're going to bring to that meeting and raise your profile. So the question was today in the Ask Denis episode, how do I raise my profile in meetings? 3 areas. 1, understand your intent for the meeting. In other words, what do you want to get out of it? Number 2, what are the 1, 2, or 3 key questions you want to ask in that meeting? And number 3, bring energy to the meeting. Listeners, it's a pleasure to be with you today to discuss this topic on Ask Denis episode. Have a great weekend ahead and set up your meetings for next week with success or for success. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.